What's up, my neurodivergent neighbors? This is Matt Reed, certified life coach, certified ADHD coach. Reaching out to you from my business, The In Place, ADHD coaching and executive function coaching. I'm live from my car in the parking lot where my son's having dance class. I'll be honest, I'm a little banged up. I went to a concert last night, and I am getting way too old to go see concerts on school nights. But as I work with my clients day in and day out, things inspire me. Things happen in my life, and I need to share them. So what I wanted to talk about today was getting a diagnosis, sharing a diagnosis with your kids, and the fear of labeling or stigmatization. Little story. So one of my kids was struggling a lot and was diagnosed with, I'll just say, a psychiatric disorder. And I called my folks, great relationship with my folks, and my dad, who is not the kind of guy who swears regularly. When I said what the diagnosis was, he said, "Oh shit." And I thought that was a really interesting response, knowing how hard things had been and how much we'd struggled. I felt relief. Like, yeah, it wasn't the best thing to know that my kid has this difficult to deal with psychiatric situation, but we've been dealing with it already, and being able to name it and then treat it is important. I had a similar situation this week where same kid got a really comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation, and we went through the results with the clinician, and there were some learning disabilities, there were some processing disorders in there, like some serious stuff that's hindering his ability to be his best self academically and also, outside of school. But those issues already existed. So is it in any way a bad thing to have him be labeled as having these disabilities? I can't see a downside. Now we can get the appropriate accommodations. Now we can get the appropriate treatment. And the doctor who went over it with us said that there's a likelihood that he'll be able to catch up. That's great. And it's going to be easier to do that with a real diagnosis. So a thing that I see far too much, in my opinion, is parents who won't let it be written down anywhere that their kid has ADHD, or won't tell the kid. Kids are smarter than we think they are. They're especially in tune to knowing when they're different and when they're struggling. And if you know you're struggling and you don't know what it is, and it's not a diagnosis, it's just, well, hey, am I stupid? Am I lazy? What's wrong with me? That's hard. But to know, hey, I've got ADD, it's this manageable thing, maybe probably take some medication, maybe do some behavioral stuff, you can live a perfectly fine life. That seems like a much more palatable alternative. That's my reminder to be doing this. See? Practice what I preach. So, I've even had adult clients who have talked to their parents and said, "Oh yeah, you got diagnosed with ADD when you were like 10, and they never did anything about it, and they never got the kid any treatment or even told them about it. And then, they're in my office 20 years later wishing they'd had a different life. wishing they knew what they knew now back then. So I think that we're protecting our kids from a straw man. If the diagnosis is real, it exists in an objective reality. Best thing we can do is get the diagnosis and then treat it and deal with it, because that's really the difference between the positive outcomes and the negative outcomes with any sort of severe ADHD. Are you dealing with it or not? So I encourage you to fight the stigma, fight the impression of stigma. Get a diagnosis if you think you have ADD or if you think your kid has it, and treat it, deal with it. All right, I'm Matt Reed, ADHD since 1978. You can check out my blog and my website, theinplace.net, or you can just hang out and watch more YouTube videos.